It was a sunny, clear, and warm summer day. Luda was walking home from her night shift and decided to stop by the Mega Green Shopping Center on the way. They promised decent discounts for owners of discount cards today, so Luda's mother asked her to stock up on items from the list. They didn't live very richly, they couldn't afford to splurge, and Luda's salary and her mother's pension didn't leave much room for indulgence. So they had to save money. And there it was, huge and sparkling with multicolored lights. Crowds of people, children, barkers, and the intoxicating aroma of freshly brewed coffee. Luda loved to wander around the shopping center like this, leisurely enjoying shopping, trying on a dress or shoes that she liked. Well, even if she didn't buy them, twirling in front of the mirror in the fitting room in a fancy dress was a huge pleasure for her. This was Luda's way of going out into the world. Especially since with a crazy work schedule in the ambulance, she rarely managed to go anywhere at all. Luda picked out a delicate pale pink lipstick in the cosmetics department, couldn't resist buying it, and then enjoyed a cup of coffee, savoring every sip. Well, the day was a success. Now let's go get some groceries, she decided, and went down to the lower floor of the supermarket. Standing in line at the cash register, our heroine witnessed an unpleasant conflict. A small, poorly dressed boy was trying to buy kefir, a bun, and macaroni. But he didn't have enough money, and not even much. The nasty fat cashier, instead of forgiving the boy's debt and ringing up the items, dug in and started screaming like crazy. "Get out of here, you miserable beggar. You have no money, so you have no business being in the store. Security!" Meanwhile, people were standing absolutely detached, only some were outraged that the line wasn't moving forward. The poor boy was frightened to death, dropped everything and was about to run away, but the cashier held him tightly by the sleeve, continuing to humiliate him. Luda's heart was squeezed by such injustice towards the unfortunate child. She approached him and whispered, "Don't worry, I'll pay for you." She handed the necessary amount to the cashier and reproachfully said, "Oh my God! How can you be so heartless? It was just a few cents that were missing. And you raised a fuss for everyone to hear." The child was frightened to death. Someone in the queue objected, "He's just a beggar, you can tell right away. Why feel sorry for him? He's always hanging around here, looking but not taking anything. There's no money for him. Negligent mothers have spawned so much poverty, he might steal something." Luda was shocked by such callousness and indifference. Can people really be like this? What have we come to? They're slandering a poor little child who's only 6 years old. She paid for her goods and left Mega Green in a terrible mood, all the euphoria from shopping disappearing somewhere. Suddenly, the little boy caught up with her. He looked her in the eyes and said softly, "Thank you, Auntie. You're kind and good, unlike that rat at the cash register. Don't think I'm some kind of orphan. I have a home. Do you want me to show you?" Luda laughed heartily and thought that she really needed to take the child home, as he looked only 6 years old, wandering alone around the capital. Who knows what might happen? He could get hit by a car. She decisively took his hand and said, "My name is Aunt Luda." "And what's your name?" The boy beamed, "I'm Sanka." "Great, so let's go to your place." "Hooray, let's go." "I feel so bad and scared alone." "But it's a long way, about an hour." The boy gave her the exact address, which was really on the outskirts of the city. But how did the little one end up there alone? Who let him go? She decided not to walk and waited for the boss, and they went together. On the way, the child fell asleep, and Luda, looking out the window, began to recall her past, remembering her childhood and youth. Luda's mother, Anna Grigorievna, was a midwife at the maternity hospital. She devoted her whole life to this business, and her father was a simple mechanic at a machine-building plant. Nothing special, an average family. In childhood, Luda loved animals, and homeless cats and puppies always hung around their entrance. She selflessly fed and healed them. Her parents noticed her inclination towards medicine and gave her a children's doctor's kit for her birthday. How happy she was! The girl measured everyone's temperature 100 times a day and gave injections one by one. When she grew up, she decided to follow in her mother's footsteps and entered a medical college to become a nurse. She loved medicine so much that she easily passed all the exams and successfully completed her internship at the city hospital, secretly dreaming of entering medical university. When her parents found out, they were horrified and tried to dissuade her. "Daughter, what are you thinking? Where are we going to get that kind of money? Once you finish college, you'll get a job as a nurse, and that's good. You know yourself how expensive medical school is. It's only for the rich." But Luda was a stubborn and determined girl, just like her mother, so she didn't give up her dream. She got a job at a private clinic, saved every penny, took extra shifts, and worked herself to exhaustion, but managed to save up for a year to enroll. She applied herself and passed the competition on the first try. Here, the father began to kiss and hug her. "Oh, my daughter! Oh, well done! I'm proud of you. Honestly, I didn't believe you could do it. You're clever. You'll go far with such character. Now, don't deviate from your path. I'll tell everyone at work that my daughter is a future therapist. And you'll treat me and your mother." So, 7 more years of college flew by unnoticed, and here she was, Ludmila Prokofieva, a therapist. She got a job in the local hospital department, did everything with enthusiasm and zeal. She didn't shy away from elderly patients, whom many colleagues couldn't stand and considered annoying pests, but patiently listened to all complaints, explained the treatment in detail, and encouraged them for the upcoming treatment. Sometimes, she had to take care of some patients like small children, literally making them do necessary procedures or take medicine. She stayed late in the resident's office and carefully and thoroughly analyzed each case. If necessary, she studied medical literature or consulted with her teachers. That's why patients adored and practically worshipped Ludmila Petrovna. They said about her, "A doctor from God." But one thing saddened the woman. From the very beginning of her career, the head of the department, an unpleasant and rude guy, Fyodor Sergeyevich, began to harass her. He immediately grinned when he saw her, well-groomed, young, pretty, in her prime. At first, compliments and hints, but when he realized that Luda didn't react to them, he moved on to more active actions. Once he called her into his office. Luda entered, suspecting nothing, maybe some work-related question had arisen. But the old lady's man locked the door, pressed the fragile woman against the wall, and tried to lift up her coat. At the same time, he breathed heavily and groaned, saying, "Well, little chicken, don't resist. Don't ruin your career. If we get along, I'll always be there for you, everywhere. What does it cost you? Don't refuse. I'll retire soon, and you'll become the head of the therapy department, I promise." It was unheard of. Ludmila broke free and slapped him hard. "If you ever dare to do something like that again, I'll complain to the Department of Medicine. You have a wife, children, and grandchildren already. And what are you doing? Disgusting. Fyodor Sergeyevich, I had a better opinion of you." And she ran out of the office in tears, adjusting her medical cap that had slipped off. She barely came to her senses in the bathroom, washing her face with cold water. Since then, the vindictive department head began to thoroughly ruin her life. He smiled sweetly and was extremely polite, as if nothing had happened. But he always deprived Luda of bonuses, finding one invented reason or another, often put her on the night shift, and made her work on holidays and weekends. Colleagues sympathized with the doctor and often lamented. "What a jerk, he's fixated on Ludmila Petrovna. He just won't let her live. When will he finally retire? He doesn't let a single skirt pass, the bastard. And here you go, he got what he deserved." In the end, after a year of such work and moral pressure, Luda couldn't take it anymore and transferred to the ambulance as an ordinary paramedic. They, of course, welcomed her with open arms. The work was not easy, and there were not enough competent specialists, and the salary was even lower than in the department. But the team is wonderful. Now the woman was simply relaxing with her soul. Everyone was a united team, supporting and helping each other. And this is much more valuable than a high salary but constant stress. A week later, unexpectedly, her father passed away. It was a strong shock and grief for her and her mother. He was always the true head of the family, solving any problem, listening, hugging, and coming up with something. And now they were completely alone with their mother. Mom had told Luda many times, "Daughter, it's time for you to get married already. Your father was waiting and waiting, but you still haven't walked down the aisle. The years are passing by, and you only have work on your mind. Look around, maybe you'll meet a handsome doctor at the station? Or go to a cafe and relax. You're like a robot, work at home, home at work. You only talk about patients and difficult cases." Luda just waved her hand and said, "Oh Mom, don't start. I'll have time. What should I do? Wear a sign on my chest that says I want to get married? You're funny, I swear. Something has to happen somewhere, that's my happiness, but for some reason it's not happening yet. I want real love, like you and Dad have." The woman laughed and said, "You'll say the same thing as me and your dad. We met at a dance, and then we got married almost right away. It wasn't common to court for a long time back then. We got married and then got used to each other. Those were the times. But I was lucky. Your father turned out to be a good person. He never hurt me, and he loved you so much. So I don't know if it's love or fate, probably both." In reality, Luda, of course, deep down agreed with her mother, and she also wanted to have a child. She was almost 30. She often had the same dream, walking hand in hand with a tall man with a strong chin, and they were leading a little boy by the hand. Everyone was laughing and discussing something. And it felt so good and easy on her soul. But for some reason, she was fatally unlucky in this matter. She had one boyfriend, Artem, back in her college years. The son of wealthy parents, a confident and carefree student. Luda really liked him on the outside, cute, pretty, with a good figure, and also smart. They met for 4 months, and the guy courted her, taking her to movies and concerts on weekends, and then invited her home. Luda was very happy about it, thinking that Timo wanted to introduce her to his parents, which meant that their relationship was serious. But the guy had something else in mind. He almost immediately attacked her and started pushing her towards intimacy. He pushed her onto the bed and started to make advances. Luda didn't expect this turn of events, so she started to resist and scream. She begged, "Tima! Stop! Don't do it! It hurts me. I don't want to. But he seemed to go crazy and shouted in her face, "Are you crazy? You came here yourself, agreed, and now you don't want to? What did I agree to? I thought you were taking me to meet your parents." "Stop it, Temka." But it was like a demon had possessed the guy. "Why are you pretending? Maybe you should stop acting like a prude? We've been dating for 4 months, and you're still playing hard to get. Your classmate, Sveta from the second stream, jumped on me on the first night. Or did you think that I would always just take you out for coffee and give you rings? Everything has to be paid for." Luda managed to turn away, pushed the trembling guy away, took off the ring he had given her with shaking hands, and took out all the money from her wallet and threw it in his face. "That's it. I don't owe you anything anymore. I hate you, scumbag." She barely opened the door with trembling hands and ran home in tears. She cried for a long time, locked herself in the bathroom, didn't tell anyone anything, and kept it all to herself. Since then, Luda was afraid of men and avoided them, thinking that all they wanted from women was one thing. And the incident with the supervisor at work only reinforced her opinion. So, whenever a male colleague tried to court her or show her attention, she instinctively closed up and distanced herself. The traumatic experience of her first unsuccessful love affairs had an impact. And she didn't know how to overcome this complex. The voice of the little boy interrupted her memories. "Aunt Luda, we've arrived. We have to get out now. You can see my house over there." She shook herself and nodded. The boy led her to the 3rd floor of an old panel house, opened the front door with his key, and commanded, "Take off your clothes and come in. This is where I live." Luda looked around. The decor was very modest, old, faded wallpaper, minimal furniture. The strong smell of sweat and medicine hit her nose. She wondered where the boy's parents were. He couldn't possibly live alone? She tiptoed into the bedroom and saw a man tossing and turning in delirium, covered with a pile of blankets despite the summer heat. He was exhausted and unshaven, all wet and unconscious. Luda cried out, "Oh my God! Sasha, is this your dad?" The boy nodded. "Yes, his name is Maxim. He got very sick, so I'm taking care of him. 2 days ago, he told me what medicines to bring and tea, and now he sleeps all the time for some reason. And he doesn't wake up at all. I talked to him, but he's silent. So, I thought maybe he's hungry, and I went to buy him food. And for myself too. I'm so hungry, and I'm so scared. He won't die, will he, Andy?" Ludmilla quickly took his temperature, which was over 40, and from the specific, persistent cough, she immediately understood as a therapist that the man had pneumonia, and in a very advanced form. Her first thought, of course, was to call an ambulance. But then she looked at Sasha and thought, "And what will I tell them? I don't know anyone's name or surname. The boy will probably be sent to an orphanage. Am I not a doctor? How many patients have passed through my hands like this? I'll heal him myself, and then we'll see who and what. I can't just abandon the boy in trouble." The woman brought a basin of cool water, wiped the man, and put a towel soaked in vinegar solution on his forehead. Then she sternly ordered the child, "Okay, Sasha, I'll quickly run to the pharmacy. You stay with your dad, don't cover him, he's already hot enough, just change the towel more often. Can you handle it?" He nodded, "Yes, I can." "Aunt Luda, are you sure you won't leave me? Will you come back? I'm scared alone with him." She stroked his head. "I swear, I'll be back in a flash." "Wait!" Luda spent half of the advance and bought medicine, systems, syringes and rushed to Sasha's place. On the way, she called her mother, "Mommy, something has come up. I won't be coming home today. And probably not tomorrow either. I need to help a patient get better. It's a long story. A person's life is at stake. Besides, there's also a little boy there all alone. I'm sorry, but I have to help." Her mother just sighed and said, "Well, if you have to, you have to. You can't be fixed. Go on, doctor, heal your patients. I'll be waiting for you. Just call me more often so I don't worry." Upon arriving at Sasha's apartment, Luda got to work on the treatment. She gave injections, fever-reducing medicine, and set up in 4-drip. She forced the patient to drink warm lemon tea little by little. She also cooked lunch for Sasha, chicken soup and potatoes with meat. The boy was happy and ate with a big appetite. He actively helped, trying to clean the potatoes and wash the dishes. In the evening, Luda made a bed for the boy in his room and said, "Okay, Shurik, it's late already, it's time for kids to go to bed." He asked nervously, grabbing her dress, "Aunt Luda, what about you? Are you leaving? What about us? What if Dad gets worse at night?" She patted his unruly red hair and flicked his freckles. "Shashka, I'm a real doctor. And doctors don't abandon their patients. Have you watched the cartoon about Ablet? So go to sleep and don't worry. I'll be with you until your dad gets better. Can I ask you something? Where's your mom? Why isn't she living with you? Maybe she needs to be called to let her know that your dad is sick and you're alone here." The boy just shrugged. "I don't know. I've never seen her. I've asked Dad 100 times. He just stays silent or says she's somewhere up there. And where is that? I never understood. And I don't know how to call there." Luda felt sorry for the boy. To tears, she understood that his mother had died, but didn't show it and quietly said, "Okay, Shashka, good night. Sweet dreams to you." Luda sat by Maxim's bedside all night, bringing down his temperature and changing the compresses and wet sheets under him. Only in the morning, when the temperature finally dropped to 37 degrees, did she turn off and curl up on the chair. A hoarse man's voice woke her up. He was whispering something with his lips cracked from the illness. Luda approached him closer, touched his head and asked, "How do you feel?" "Thank God, you've woken up. I'll warm up some soup for you now. Try to eat a little bit. You need to gain strength." But he suddenly grabbed her hand, cried, and babbled, "Oksanka! My love! Oh, God! I can't believe my eyes. Is it really you? Does that mean I died and went to heaven? Poor Shashka, he's there on earth, all alone. Who will take care of him?" Luda was surprised, pulled her hand away and shook her head. He's still delirious. I'm not Oksana, I'm Luda, and you definitely don't know me. You're not dead. Sasha is still sleeping in his room. You need to take a sedative. This strange reaction is probably due to the high temperature. The man shook his head, tears rolling down his unshaven cheeks. "I don't believe it. This can't be. You're Oksana. My wife. And she died 6 years ago. And if I see you, then I must be dead too. How else could it be? Honey, let me hug you. I felt so bad there without you. Why aren't you affectionate with me? Hug me, please." Luda was even more surprised and patiently explained again, "No, I'm Luda. A therapist. Your son, Sasha, accidentally met me yesterday and brought me here. He wanted to help you, but didn't know how. So I agreed to help you. I'll stay with him and treat you at the same time." She shouted, "Shurik, I hear you're not sleeping anymore. Come here. Your dad has come to his senses." The little one quickly jumped out of bed and ran barefoot to his father. He ran to him and cried with happiness, "Dad! It's so good that you're alive. I was so scared. I thought you would never wake up. Do you want some tea? I'll heat it up right away." The man looked at his son in confusion. "Well, it really is Sasha. What the hell is going on? Am I crazy? I feel like a complete idiot." He shook his head and was about to get up abruptly. But he immediately fell back on the bed and grimaced in pain in his chest. Luda said sternly, "Maxim, don't be a hero here. You have pneumonia and you need to be treated for at least 3 weeks. And it's too early to get up. So listen to the doctor. Otherwise, I'll call an ambulance and they'll take you to the hospital." Maxim said quietly, "Don't call an ambulance. I don't want to go to the hospital. And I have no one to leave Sasha with. Thank you for taking care of me. But my God, you look so much like my late wife, like a twin sister. Her portrait is up there on the shelf. I wanted to show it to you so you wouldn't think I'm crazy. Take a look for yourself. And don't worry, when I get back on my feet, I'll pay you back every penny. I understand how much you've spent." The man's temperature started to rise again from the stress, and he began to struggle to breathe and cough heavily, so Luda forbade him to talk too much, made him eat a little, gave him injections, put him on a drip, and told him to sleep. He really fell asleep instantly because he was still too weak. And Luda finally took out that very portrait and gasped. It really was her. Only without bangs and in different clothes. But everything else was identical. The woman was puzzled. How is this even possible? She kept looking at the portrait and then at herself in the mirror, and saw only one face. Ashka quietly approached, also looked at the portrait, at Luda, and said businesslike, "This is you, Aunt Luda. Although Dad always said that this is my mom, who is somewhere up there. So it turns out that you are my mom? And you came down from there? Like a fairy, huh? Wow! I thought this only happens in movies." Luda hugged the little one and replied, "Oh, Sashik, I still don't understand anything myself, honestly, but your mom really looks a lot like me. Okay, let's go. I'll give you a bath, and we'll tidy up the apartment. Since I'm temporarily your mom. And your dad will recover, then we'll figure out who is whose mom." Together they worked together, cleaned up, Luda took care of the child, bathed him, gave him a haircut, and found clean clothes. Then they happily made potato dumplings and took care of Maxim. At work, Ludmila took a week off and dedicated all her time to Maxim and Sashka. Amazingly, she felt as easy and comfortable in their modest apartment as at home. The little one was very well behaved and mature for his age. In the evenings, they painted with watercolors and markers together, and then she told him fairy tales, coming up with a fanciful plot on the go. Maxim was getting better every day. He was already getting up slowly, although he still breathed heavily and wheezed. The man watched Luda and Sashka, and tears welled up in his eyes. Though he couldn't believe it, it seemed to him that there had been a reincarnation and Oksanka was with them now, and they were like before, a strong and friendly family. It was so strange and incomprehensible. He felt like he was dreaming, that none of this could be real. And how Sashka changed in that week. From a quiet and introverted shy boy, he turned into a joker and chatterbox. Happiness hopped in his naive eyes. He didn't leave Luda's side and literally followed her everywhere. It was clear that he was finally getting the attention and maternal warmth and care he had been missing all these years. The week flew by like a day, and Ludmilla had to go on shift. Maxim was still weak, of course, but he could handle Sashka for a day without her. She sat down by his bed and began to talk. "Maxim, I'm going to work tomorrow. And I also need to get home where my mother is alone. So I'll be leaving soon. But after my shift, I'll come straight to you. When I'm nearby on trips, I'll come and give you shots. Tell me about yourself, about your late wife. How did it happen that she died?" The man sighed and began to tell his story. "I grew up in a troubled family. My parents, if you can call them that, drank like crazy. I often went hungry and constantly wandered the streets. To this day, I still see my mother's swollen face distorted by alcohol, and her screams, and the thick army belt of my drunken stepfather, which often hit me. I walked around with bruises for a week. I was lucky that the janitor, Baba Zina, often felt sorry for me and fed me. She was the one who made me study, not skip classes, scolded me when I started smoking, and got me into a construction college after school. Otherwise, I would have disappeared a long time ago, gone to jail, or worse. I met Oksanka in technical school. I noticed her right away. She was always sitting on a bench, reading a book, and not in a rush to go home, just like me. I tried to buy her chocolate, ice cream, or a pastry with jam with my last coins. That's how we became friends. Her situation wasn't any better. Her mother died when she was 10 and she couldn't remember much about her because her old grandmother raised her and didn't give her much. She scolded her for a piece of bread. But even she died when we got married. I fell in love with Oksanka right away when I saw her. My heart beat faster, and my breath was taken away. Her hair was so beautiful, golden and thick, just like yours, and her eyes were so kind and a little sad. She watched me for a long time, not believing that I had serious intentions. I was just a poor guy with no prospects. After technical school, I got a job at a factory, and they gave me this apartment. I worked hard, took shifts and overtime, just to provide for my family. Oksanka became a painter and earned good money. She was tired, of course, the job was hard. You won't believe it, but we never had a serious argument. She would get angry sometimes if I went out with the guys for a couple of beers after work, but in the morning, she would make breakfast and worry if I had a headache. We wanted children very much, of course, how could it be otherwise? But it didn't work out, one miscarriage, then another, the doctors banned pregnancy, saying that we needed a break, but it happened almost immediately again. Oksana suffered a lot, walked heavily, her stomach hurt all the time, and the job was not easy, all day long. And then, in the 7th month, she had a severe bleeding at night. I was very frightened, took her to the hospital by taxi. I prayed, cried, begged for her to survive all night. But in the morning, I received terrible news. She had premature labor, and my wife died from bleeding. They couldn't stop it. The baby was also hanging by a thread. No one gave him a chance to survive. He was too small and premature. He couldn't breathe on his own. I thought I would go crazy with grief. I couldn't believe what was happening. And then the the memorial service, and the terrible, oppressive loneliness and sadness. I paced around this apartment like a caged animal, howling and pounding my fists on the walls. Sasha lay in the premature baby unit for 2 months. I visited him, took this tiny red lump in my arms, which didn't look like a normal baby at all, and sometimes, in a sinful way, I thought, was he worth my Oksanka's life? But I couldn't find an answer. Thank God, my son survived and grew stronger, despite the doctor's predictions, and he was finally discharged home. And then the survival test began. None of my acquaintances believed that I could raise a son alone. Some even advised me to put him in a children's home. But I was strongly against it. I had practically no childhood myself, so I swore to myself that I would work myself to the bone to raise my son. At first, it was unbearably difficult, but I learned how to change diapers, bathe, and feed him. I took a leave of absence as a single father, then worked 3 shifts a day, asking neighbors and acquaintances to watch him. That's how I slowly pulled myself together. Everything went wrong about 3 months ago. I was laid off and lost my job. But I had to survive, and I couldn't leave Sasha alone for long. So I became a janitor in our neighborhood. I finished work before lunch and was free. They paid me peanuts, of course, but at least I had time to take Sasha to and from daycare. And a couple of weeks ago, I got caught in a heavy rain and got soaked to the skin. And so he got sick. I thought it was just a cold, tried to drink something myself. But it only got worse and worse. And I was afraid to call an ambulance. There was no one to leave Sasha with. I don't remember anything else. I must have lost consciousness. That's how it goes. Thank you, Ludmilla, for responding to someone else's trouble. And saving me. And for looking after my son. There are not many caring people like you these days. Honestly, I don't want you to leave. It makes me want to cry. And Sasha has become a completely different person in just 1 week. He's beaming with happiness. So our home is always open to you. We're always happy to have you. You're like our guardian angel now. Ludmilla said quietly, "You know, Maxim. I don't even understand what's happening to me. We hardly know each other at all. But it feels like I've always lived here, you know? Everything is so familiar, so easy and cozy. And it's like I've known you for 100 years, and Sasha, like a relative. From the very first minute. Does this ever happen? And the main thing is, I can't understand how there can be such a similarity. With your wife? We're like twins. But I definitely don't have any brothers or sisters. I'm an only child in the family. I need to have a serious talk with my mom. Can I take a picture of this portrait of Oksana? I'll show it to my mom. Maxim replied, "There's an album in the closet over there. Take any photo of Oksana. We used to take pictures a lot. It was my hobby once." Luda opened the album and was amazed. Incredible, but in every photo she saw herself. And the smile, and the same eyes, and even the mole under the right. Hi. She chose one close-up photo and put it in her bag. Then she went to say goodbye to Sasha. "Well, Shurik, I have to go to work tomorrow. You're in charge. Don't let Dad walk too much while he's healing. It's clear? There's soup and macaroni in the fridge. Warm it up in the morning." The boy suddenly became serious and sad, and asked quietly, looking into her eyes, "You're leaving for good, right? Tell me honestly. And what about us?" Inside Luda, everything turned upside down, and a wave of tenderness and pity swept through her whole body. She hugged the boy tightly and promised quietly, "You silly thing. As soon as I finish work, I'll come right to you. I promise as a doctor." "Agreed?" Sasha beamed and replied, "Agreed. I'll miss you, Aunt Luda." And he hugged her tightly with his warm, childlike hands. And she swallowed a lump in her throat. Ludmilla was on her way home, preparing for a serious conversation with her mother. But she was feeling so much inside. She was amazed at herself. Just a week ago, she didn't even know Sasha or Maxim, and was living a very ordinary and boring life. But now they were the most important and necessary people in her life. She couldn't imagine life without them. Whenever she thought of Maxim, a wave of love and tenderness immediately overwhelmed her, mixed with pity and compassion for this man whom fate had treated so cruelly. Mom was very happy to see her daughter and started grumbling like an old woman, "Lord, finally, I've been waiting for you to come home. Where have you been? This has never happened before. I've been so worried and exhausted. Who is this important patient you've been treating for a week without leaving their side?" Luda hugged her mom and kissed her on the cheek, saying, "Don't grumble. Sit down instead. I have a serious conversation to have with you. In the apartment where I was treating the patient, I found this portrait. Look! It's me! The same face and even the same mole under the right eye. How can this be? Mom, tell me the truth. It's clear that such coincidences simply don't happen. And this woman in the photo must have some connection to me." The pensioner turned pale and grabbed her heart. She took a gulp of Valocordon and then paused for a moment before telling the old and complicated story. "You see, my daughter, your father and I couldn't have children for a long time. I never told anyone, but I had a terrible sin when I was young. I thought Dimka was truly in love with me and imagined an unearthly love until death. Anyway, I got pregnant the first time, but when he found out, he went crazy and sent me for an underground abortion, saying that he didn't need children now. That's where I was mutilated. I suffered for a long time after that. I even wanted to do something to myself. My health was severely affected. It was so disgusting. I didn't tell anyone about it. And then I met your father at a dance. He fell in love with me right away and sent matchmakers. We got married soon after. We started a family. But no matter how hard we tried, I couldn't get pregnant, and I was afraid to tell the truth to my husband. I thought he would leave me right away. Who would need me then? That night, I was on duty. They brought in a sniffling girl who was only 18, from an unhappy family with an alcoholic stepfather and mother. She was poorly dressed and not well groomed. She didn't even know who she was pregnant with. And she had twins. She gave birth surprisingly quickly and without complications, 2 baby girls. But she refused to take them in her arms. She wasn't happy and wanted to leave both of them in the maternity ward. She said, "I can't handle 2. And there's no money, and if I show up at home with 2, they'll kick us out." And then a crazy idea came into my head. I told her, "Give me one of the babies. It will be easier for you, and I'll be happy. And the babies won't be orphans." She didn't mind at all. She was even happy to have one less burden. And my colleagues helped me quietly arrange everything. I adopted you. I was really afraid that your father wouldn't accept you, and anyway, I didn't consult with him. At first, He scolded me, frowned, didn't talk to me for a week, but then he reluctantly took you in his arms, carried you, looked at you, thought, and said, "We'll call her Luda. She'll be mine, got it? And don't tell anyone." Well, my dear, now you have a dad and a mom. We won't let you down. Dad won't let anyone hurt you, remember that. Since then, he cherished you, loved you as his own, and so did I, of course. After all, you are our daughter. I don't have anyone closer or dearer to me than you. Please forgive me, Ludaka, for hiding the truth from you. Don't be angry with us. Ludmilla was in complete shock. So much had happened to her during this difficult week. It was incomprehensible to her. She didn't know how to react and what to do with her life now. Her mind was just exploding. It turns out that everything was decided for her. They took away her mother and her sister, and didn't tell her anything about it. Luda whispered, "Oh God! Mom! How am I supposed to figure all of this out now? I treated a man, Maxim, whose late wife turns out to be my twin sister, whom I never even saw in my life. And his son, my nephew, Sasha. He thinks of me as his mother. You really messed things up. How am I supposed to act around him now? And how do I explain to the child that I'm not his mother? Why didn't you tell me all of this earlier, when Oksana was still alive? We could have been friends, talked to each other. She was my sister. Oh, you! I don't know how to live with all of this, honestly. I need to figure it out for myself. Sorry, I'll go to my room." Anna Grigorievna cried all night, terribly worried. Well, that's it. Now Ludaka will blame me for everything and never forgive me. And what am I going to do without her? We won't sit together in the kitchen anymore, won't gossip in secret. Maybe I really should have told her everything earlier? But how? For a whole day, driving around with the brigade on calls, Luda couldn't get all of this out of her head. She didn't know what to do next. She was drawn to Maxim like a magnet, and she missed Sasha like crazy. But how confusing everything was. To raise her nephew and call him her son? To love a man for whom you will always be a copy of his late wife? To call another woman mother your whole life and forgive her for everything? To never see your own sister, but to take her place in someone else's family after her death? Her head was boiling with these thoughts. Their driver, Stepanik, was a good friend of Luda's. They often talked heart to heart, shared their troubles. The elderly man immediately noticed that something was wrong with the paramedic. When he saw the sad Ludmilla, sitting with a bag over her shoulder on a bench near the station after the shift, he timidly approached her. "Ludaka, can I sit next to you? Won't bother you? Why are you twisting and turning?" The woman sighed and gestured for her old friend to sit down. "Oh, Stepanik. You won't believe it. I'm sitting here, like in that fairy tale, about the 3 roads, and I don't know which one to choose. Something happened. I can't wrap my head around it. My whole life is upside down. Half my life has gone by, and suddenly it turns out that it wasn't yours at all, but some stranger's life that was imposed on you." The elderly man said quietly, "Can you share it with me? Maybe I can give you some old-fashioned advice? It will be easier that way. If you don't want to talk about it, I'll understand. It's a personal matter." Luda sadly told him about all her news and adventures. Then she added, "So what do I do now? I can't figure it out. How do I live on? Call another woman mother, like before? Tell my nephew that he's my son? How do I explain all of this to Maxim?" Stepanek objected. I'll tell you what, Luda. Your situation is certainly not easy. It's like a movie. If you don't know what to do what your heart tells you to do right now. It won't deceive you. Where do you want to go now? To Maxim's? Or home to your mother? Luda nodded in agreement. To Maxim's. And to Sasha. I'm drawn there. All my thoughts are about them. The driver said, well, then go. Tell him everything honestly, without hiding anything. Lies, even if they're for salvation, always come out sideways. Don't be afraid of anything. Don't look back at others. Don't worry about what people will think. Just live. And time will tell what's what. And don't hold a grudge against your mother. No matter what, she raised you well. Look at what a wonderful doctor you've become. And mistakes, they happen to everyone. That's a thing of the past. It's not up to us to judge our parents. It is unknown where you would have grown up if it weren't for your foster mother. It's possible you would have been in an orphanage. After all, your biological mother couldn't even raise your sister properly. So, everything happens for the best. Ludmila smiled and shook her colleague's hand, saying, thank you, Stepanek. You're a genius. I feel so much better now. Well, I have to run. Sasha is probably waiting for me. I promised him I'd be back soon. Ludmila took the bus to Maxim's, buying fruits, sweets, and a large, beautiful backpack for Sasha on the way. After she rang the doorbell, Sasha immediately ran to her with a scream of happiness. He hugged her tightly and whispered, hooray! You finally came! You didn't let me down. Let's go. I'll feed you. Dad and I made potato and mushroom stew. Ludmila was horrified. What potato stew? He needs to get up early. He's too weak. I never allowed him to get up early. The frightened boy widened his eyes. Oh, we were going to do it quietly. I think I slipped up. Just don't tell Dad. Maxim lay in bed like a model patient and smiled. I did everything you told me to do. I took my pills, did my inhalations, and gargled with the mixture. And I missed you so much, I swear. So, how are you? Are you tired? Did you find out the secret of your resemblance to Oksana from your mom? Ludmila sighed and replied, I'm going to tell you something that will shock you. I don't even know how you and Sasha will react. I'm still in shock myself. It turns out that your late wife Oksana and I are twin sisters. Our mother gave birth to both of us and wanted to abandon us because she came from an unstable family. But my foster mother, who worked as a midwife there and was childless, convinced her to give me to her and take the other girl, saying that it would be easier to raise one child. That's the whole secret. It's terrible. I had a biological sister my whole life and didn't even know it. We could have been friends, helped each other. It's unbelievable. So, Sasha is not a stranger to me at all. He's my nephew. That's why I couldn't just pass him by at the supermarket. Everything inside me turned upside down. And now, here at your home, I feel like I've been here before. Maybe that's why I'm not indifferent to you either. They say that twins have a strong karmic connection, even if they're not together. I don't know, Maxim, what to do next. To be honest, I'm completely confused. Everything fell on me like a ton of bricks. The man smiled even wider. What to do? Marry me. It's obvious. I know I'm still weak, but I'll recover fully, find a good job, and we'll live as a happy family. Sasha will be happy too, I'm sure. He's already crazy about you. So, think about it, I'm not joking. Ludmila was stunned by such a proposal. She never expected a proposal of marriage. But she was embarrassed by one question. Maxim, won't you always compare me to Oksana in your mind? I'm just her copy to you. You don't love me, you just love her in my face. But I need you to love me, you understand? Let's just be friends for now. I can live with you, be with Sasha. I've really grown attached to him, especially since he's my nephew. We'll see what happens from there. Okay? Maxim looked sad and obviously upset, but said out loud, okay then. I'll accept any decision you make. I'm just happy that you're with us now. So, are you going to try our potatoes? They've already cooled down. The three of them had dinner, laughed, then had tea and cake. Sasha proudly walked around the apartment with his new backpack, filled to the brim with children's books, and pretended to be a schoolboy. The next day was a day off, and in the morning, Luda told Maxim, I need to visit my mom and apologize to her. I said some things I shouldn't have said to her in the heat of the moment. I can only imagine how she's feeling right now. Can I take Sasha with me? The little one needs to meet his grandmother, right? It's not fair that everyone else has a grandmother except for Shurik. When you're feeling better, we'll all go to see her together. Or we'll invite her here, okay? Sasha was overjoyed and exclaimed, hooray! We're going to visit someone? What's Grandma's name? Is she very old? Can she bake pies? Vladik's grandma bakes the most delicious pies, you'll lick your fingers. 1,000 questions poured out of the boy. When Luda and Sasha arrived home, Anna Grigorievna immediately guessed who they were. Shurik looked a little like Luda, so much so that you could even think he was her son. The woman was very happy and busy. Oh, who's come to visit us? Hello, little one, what's your name? The boy replied with a businesslike tone, I'm Sanka, your grandson. That's what my mom Luda said. So, are you my real grandmother? The real one? The woman laughed, unable to contain herself. Of course, the real one. My name is Granny Anya. Well, what are we standing here for? Let's go to the kitchen. I'll treat you to some fresh cutlets and sugar buns straight from the oven. The little one ate heartily and sat down to watch his favorite cartoon about the Smeshuriki. Luda took her mother's hand and said quietly, forgive me, Mom, for answering you so sharply back then. I spoke without thinking. I've thought it over since then. And I want to thank you for raising me with my dad, for loving me. I felt it. It's a shame, of course, that I didn't get to talk to Oksana, but what can you do? Fate is fate. But now I have a nephew, Sanka. I've grown so attached to him, he's wonderful. Only he thinks I'm his mother, and how do I explain the opposite to him? I don't know. And also, Maxim proposed to me. And I refused. But I'll live with them. I'm so confused, Mom. I love him, he's not indifferent to me. And I adore Sanka. But I'm worried that Maxim sees me as just a copy of his late wife, Oksana, and he loves her, not me, you understand? And what about me? I want to be loved for my soul, not someone else's in my face. The woman sighed heavily and replied, you know, daughter, it's hard for me to give you advice because I've made a lot of mistakes myself. But I can tell you one thing, when I married your dad, I probably didn't love him if I'm being honest. But with some feminine intuition, I knew he loved me and would never let me down. And I never regretted that choice. Your dad did everything he could for our family, respected, valued, and loved me all his life, no matter what. Other men abandon their children, but your dad loved you like his own and never blamed me for not having kids. I fell in love with him later when I felt that kind of love. Do you understand? It's the same with Maxim. If he loved his wife and raised his son, he'll treat you like a princess, I think. At first, he might compare you to Oksana, but he'll see who you really are, and everything will work out. And then it's up to you. I'll support you either way. They sat for a while longer, and then Luda started packing her things. Her mother looked sad and wiped away a tear. Luda hugged her tightly and asked if she wanted her to stay, but Anna Grigorevna insisted she was happy for her daughter and would wait for them to visit. They hugged and cried, both feeling a little sad to part. They arrived at Maxim's house, and Sasha began talking about visiting Grandma Anna, his emotions overflowing. Maxim noticed Luda's suitcase in the hallway and waited for the right moment to ask. Finally, when Shurik fell asleep on the couch, Luda sat beside Maxim on the bed. He asked hopefully, "Ludaka, have you changed your mind? Are you moving in with us?" "I'm so happy." The woman smiled and said, "I agree. I'll marry you. You and Sasha have become my family in just a couple of weeks. I can't live alone anymore. But let's see how it goes. I can't just leave Sasha now. He's come to trust me, and I've grown attached to him. He calls me Mom, and that's fine with me. You mean something to me too, but it's complicated. Don't rush me, okay?" Maxim jumped up and exclaimed, "Thank you. You won't regret it. I'll be the best husband and father in the world. I have someone to live for now." And so they started living together as a family. Maxim recovered completely and got a new job as a foreman on a construction site, while Sasha started first grade. Luda, as a real wife and homemaker, took care of their home, cooking delicious meals, baking cakes, and feeding the whole family. They looked like the perfect family from the outside. At first, their neighbors were scared of Luda, thinking she was Oksana's ghost, but they gradually got used to her as a different person. The only thing that saddened Maxim was that they still slept on different couches, and they never became intimate. He promised not to pressure her, but she was the one who didn't want to get closer. They were best friends, even though when he accidentally touched her hand or hugged her, he could clearly feel that she was burning with desire. But for some reason, she was hiding it carefully. The man was worried, maybe she doesn't like me? And she's only living with us because Sasha is her nephew? I can't take it anymore. I'll go crazy. To see the most desired woman in the world every day and not be able to touch her. It's hellish torture. Luda herself understood that this couldn't go on forever, and to be honest, wouldn't mind if Maxim showed some persistence. But inside her, there was some kind of barrier. On one hand, she was afraid that Maxim still loved Oksana, not her, and on the other hand, that sad experience of failed relationships in the past was getting in the way. Well, and then, she was terribly embarrassed that she was already over 30 and still a virgin and simply didn't know how or what. Once they were invited to a celebration, to say goodbye to Stepanik as he was retiring. The celebration was held in a restaurant, and many people gathered. Everyone was drinking, congratulating the retiree, dancing, and having fun. And then Maxim went out to smoke with Stepanik. One word led to another, and the tipsy Maxim couldn't hold back and confided in the old man about what was bothering him. So, in a few words. The old man was silent for a while and replied, "You're silly, Maxim. Luda loves you more than life. Don't be afraid, take the initiative, she's waiting for it. Maxim hesitated. I promised not to pressure her, what if she gets offended? Stepanik laughed. Yes, women always say that, but they're just waiting for the man to make the first move. Believe me, I've known Luda for many years. And Maxim decided. Sasha was staying overnight with his grandmother Ani that day. They entered the apartment, and Maxim passionately kissed Luda, pressing her to him. He was afraid that she would push him away and become outraged, but to his surprise, the woman responded to the kiss and melted in his arms, allowing him to do anything. What a passionate night it was! They literally bathed in love and tenderness, whispered the most intimate phrases to each other. In the morning, Maxim, kissing the weakened Luda, whispered, "What fools we are! We wasted so much time. I love you, Ludaka. Only you, don't worry. You're nothing like Oksana in character, only in appearance. And I live with you and for you." Luda simply melted from such words and quietly replied, "And I love you, Maxim. Very much." Soon the couple got married, and they began to dream of having children together, because Sasha was asking for a little brother or sister. Let's wish them happiness, as they both deserve it fully.